Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I grew into the person that I am today. That I grew, that I am growing. I'm growing. I'm forever growing. We're all growing, and we're all evolving. So today's video is not about a comment that I received on a video. It is about a DM that I received a little while ago, a couple days ago, I think, and I thought it was an interesting DM, so I want to read it to you. I was asking for questions to do a video on my drama channel, and this is a question that they sent me in a DM, and the question goes like this. Hi, I saw your story asking for questions for opinions, but my question won't fit. I'm wondering your opinion on a recovering addict family member who apologizes for very, very hurtful things they did or said when they were using by saying things like, I'm sorry you took it wrong. I had no control over what I said because I was on drugs. I'm struggling so hard right now with forgiving when I feel like it's not a real apology, but I don't want to hold a grudge, and I keep hearing you in my head saying that not believing an addict is wishing death on them. Maybe there's a vlog or a Peterisms video on this already that you could point me to. Either way, thank you so much. And I thought it was a really important question to respond to, and a really great question, actually. So I just want to say this, first of all, for those of you out there that don't know or haven't watched my channel before, that I am a recovering alcoholic and addict. I've been sober for 28 years and 11 months. My sobriety birthday is December 17th of 1994. We do not borrow time in recovery, but if I make it to December 17th of 2023, I will have 29 years sober. But we believe that we just have a daily reprieve. So it's just, one day at a time. So I want to make that very, very clear. The other thing I want to make very clear is that I'm only sharing my experience, strength, and hope. I am not a representative of any program. This is just my experience of what I have gone through in recovery and what I believe and what I've experienced and what has worked for me. Two things that you brought up I think are very interesting, and I'm not really sure in what order to address them in, but I think I'm going to address the latter first. When this person said to me, I'm struggling so hard right now with forgiving when I feel like it's not a real apology, but I don't want to hold a grudge and keep hearing you in my head saying that not believing an addict is wishing death on them. Okay, so I made this statement quite a bit in my past, right? On videos. I'm not really sure how I said it or how I stated it. I'm sure there's somebody out there that has pieced together all those pieces and has time clips of them and things like that. I don't know how I said it, right? What I was responding to when I make that statement is not about a family member or a friend not believing somebody being sober. That's not what I'm saying, okay? What I'm saying is to put somebody down or to question their sobriety from a hurtful or a hateful point of view, okay, is to wish death on that person. And what I mean by that, and I'm really almost kind of talking about it from a social media point of view. When I see people come for social media figures and say things like, well, that dirty addict, or throw in their face that they're an alcoholic or an addict, and use it to weaponize it against them and things like that. That is when I feel like it's wishing death on them, okay? Not to have a family member that has maybe relapsed multiple times or has not stuck to their words and things like that. That I do not believe is wishing death on an addict. I want to make that very, very clear. Each of our relationships with alcoholics or addicts we have in our life is our own personal relationship, and we have every right to have the feelings and the emotions that we have, I hurt so many relationships in active addiction. I don't even know that I realized till many, many years later that I had hurt those relationships. In fact, I've shared this in videos that years ago I had a conversation with my dad. I finally listened to the audiobook of the book Beautiful Boy. By David Sheff, and it's a fantastic book if you've never read it. It's about a dad's experience with his son's meth addiction. And his son actually wrote, his name is Nick Sheff, and he actually wrote a book about his addiction as well. They turned Beautiful Boy into a movie. I think the book is so much better, in all honesty. And it's really about the struggles that this father went through and just keeping his son alive and just doing anything that he possibly would to help his son and things like that. And talking about enabling family members and things like that. And then at the very end of the book, he starts talking about what he learned and setting boundaries and limits in place. And that ultimately that was to help himself, but to also help his son, because there was really nothing else that he could do, you know? I can remember finishing that book and calling my dad and wanting to tell my dad to read that book, right? And my dad is somebody that's very knowledgeable in addiction and has really educated himself ever since I've gotten sober and things like that. And I said something to my dad about this book, and I was like, have you ever heard of it? He's like, oh yeah, I read it when it first came out. And I said, how did you ever hear about that book? And he was like, I don't know. I read about it like in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or something. My dad reads like 3 newspapers every morning. To this day, he still does. And I said, oh, so you read it like when... He goes, yeah, I read it when it first came out. And I said, how close to reality or like your experience was that book? He goes, exactly. That was exactly what I went through. I lived in total fear for years with you, right? I don't think that my dad had faith in my sobriety because I had tried so many times. I had lied so many times and said I was getting sober when I didn't. I had tried so many times authentically and couldn't, that I don't know that my dad, even my mom, who is in active addiction, I don't think she believed I was going to stay sober. I don't think anybody believed that I was going to stay sober, you know? And I don't feel like that was them wishing death on me. I think that was their experience of what I had put them through got them to the point where they couldn't have baseless hope that they were going to get hurt again. And so they just couldn't do that. I can remember like years after I got sober. I mean, it was years after I got sober. I'm trying to think of how long it would have been, but it probably would have been maybe 6 years after I got sober, because it was with my ex. And he's a hairstylist, and so we went to a hair show in Las Vegas. Maybe 7, 8 years after I got sober, but we went to Vegas, and I think it was the first time I went to Vegas. I don't remember, but anyway, I remember my dad. So I'm like 6, 7, 8 years sober at the time. I don't remember exactly how long. And I remember my dad saying to me, like, aren't you worried about going to Las Vegas with the drinking? And I was like, no. And I'm like actively involved in a 12-step program, going to meetings, how to spot, you know. And I'm like, no, I'm not worried about it at all. And he was like, you're not worried about going to Vegas with all that drinking? And I was like, no. And I mean, my attitude was, if I wanted to drink, I'd drink here. You know, I didn't need to be in Vegas to drink. And I knew that about myself, right? And so, but my dad was afraid of that. Oh, I had been sober for a long time. He had witnessed my sobriety. He had witnessed the changes in me. I was working in a treatment program, you know. He knew I had a sponsor. He knew my sponsor, you know. He knew I was going to meetings. He witnessed that. My dad, in early sobriety, had taken me to a lot of meetings. There was nothing at that time that would make him worry about me other than the fact that I was going to Las Vegas. And he knew that that was a big party place. So, to me, that wasn't him wishing death on me by doubting me or questioning my sobriety. I think he, to this day, has every right to question my sobriety, as do the people that I put through hell, you know? If my husband, who wasn't even around when I was drinking or drugging, if he was worried about something or I gave him any clue that, you know, I was on the wrong track, to be honest with you, I hope he would say something to me. I hope he'd say, I'm having a really hard time buying this, or I'm worried about you, or you haven't called your sponsor in a while, or you're not going to meetings anymore, or you're not praying, or, you know, you don't ever talk about sobriety or recovery anymore. Like, what's going on? I hope that he would bring that to me. I don't see that as him wishing death on me at all. I see that as him loving me and being concerned about me and caring about me. It's when somebody uses it to weaponize it against you, okay? It's when somebody is putting you down for being an addict or an alcoholic that I feel like they are wishing death on you. And I wish maybe in the past I had been clearer about that. That's what I really feel is when they're wishing death on you, is when they're weaponizing your addiction on you. Does that make sense? Even people that are in active addiction, I feel like if they're weaponizing it against you, that's what I feel about it. I think it's interesting, this language that you use. First of all, I want to make this very, very clear. And I don't know if your sibling is in recovery, like in a 12-step program, or they're just sober. I don't know. There's many ways to get sober today. I work a 12-step program. You don't have to get sober, right? But in a 12-step program, we have an amends process, okay? And the majority of 12-step programs that I know, we all share very similar amends process. And that amends process is not saying, I'm sorry, okay, forget what I did. Like my dad said to me years ago, you know? Please don't say, I think with addicts and alcoholics, that hits different. Like when I say that in videos, there's a lot of people that are like, well, I think I'm sorry does apply here, does apply there. When you have grown up or you live around an addict or a parent or a spouse of an addict, I mean, we as addicts and alcoholics say, I am sorry all the time, okay? And don't mean it. And I know that because my mom said it to me too when she was in active addiction. I got to the point where I was just like, don't even say it. Like, I don't even want to hear it, right? So I think it hits different when you're the family member or a friend of an addict or an alcoholic, right? Or somebody that has an addiction that is affecting your life as well. I think to just say, I'm sorry, hits different, which is why we tell people in recovery, an amends is not saying I'm sorry. An amends is looking at that person in the eyes, making direct amends, taking direct responsibility for the actions that you have hurt them with, okay? And saying that it will never happen again and explaining the changes in the work that you're doing and how that's not going to happen again. And then further going on and witnessing that by showing that it doesn't happen again, right? You only do that when you are at that place to do that. I've heard like a lot of people in recovery will say, well, I made amends to my parents like 5 times because I keep on going back out there. Like, that's dangerous, right? That's dangerous, and that's why, like, you know, at some point people are going to be like, 12-step programs don't work. Because my son or daughter has made amends to me 5 times, and they keep on going back out there. Why would I believe it? You know, it still hurts. I don't believe them. I can't forgive them today. You know, they keep on, they're showing me the same behaviors that they showed me from the past. I can't believe it. That's on them. That's not on you. You have every right to accept or not accept an amends, you know? Every right. I was just talking about this in a video that I did on one of my channels the other day. I think, you know, I'm not telling people not to accept amends. I think if you feel like you're, you know, presented with a genuine amends, accept it if you want to, you know? But an amends is not just about forgiving somebody. An amends is somebody coming to you and saying, an amendment to the Constitution is a change, right? So an amendment is a change. So when somebody comes to you and says, I need to make amends to you, what they're saying is, I want to prove to you that I've made a change in my life. I want to show to you that I am a different person. I'm a changed person. And this will not happen again. And let me take responsibility for my actions of the past. Part of that amends process, I have always been taught, was to also say to that person, are there things that I'm leaving out? Are there things that I hurt you with that I'm forgetting or I'm not taking accountability for? Please remind me of that so that I can take responsibility for that and I can take accountability for that, right? The language that you use in here, and I don't know if you meant this specifically or not, but when you say in here, I'm wondering your opinion on a recovering addict, so I'm assuming that they're in a 12-step program, who apologizes for very hurtful things they did or said when they were using by saying things like, I'm sorry you took it wrong. Okay, well, first of all, I'm sorry you took it wrong is not taking accountability. I just want to make that clear. Okay, whether that person's is in recovery or not. I've had people that aren't even sober in my life, okay, don't have addiction issues or anything, that have said, I'm sorry you took it that way. Basically what that's saying is, I'm not sorry for what I did. I'm sorry you responded to it the way that you did. That is a backhanded way. That's not an apology. That's not accountability, okay? That's putting it off on you. That's putting the blame on you. That's saying, I'm sorry that you handled it the way that you did. That had nothing to do with me. That's what that comment means. I just want you to know. And no, I would not be accepting that either, okay? Just so you know. And then you said, I had no control over what I said because I was on drugs. Well, like I said, I don't know if this person is in a 12-step program. In a 12-step program, we are taught not to blame things or drugs and alcohol, okay? That is but a symptom of our addiction. That is not an excuse for why we behaved the way that we did. Sure, we wouldn't have done things or said things when we were drinking or whatever, right? But to say an amends, like, just to blame it on that, like, that's the whole reason why we're sober today, okay? Like, I can say to somebody, hey, listen, these things wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been drinking or drugging, and that's why I'm not drinking or drugging today, and I want to demonstrate to you through my sobriety that they won't happen again because, A, they never should have been said, number 2, or B, you didn't deserve them to be said to you. Okay, I know that they were hurtful. Whether I was drunk or sober, you didn't deserve them to be said. Whether I was drunk or sober, I realized they were hurtful and they hurt you. And I am sorry, you know, that they hurt you. I take full responsibility for that. In that moment, I think to say I'm sorry is appropriate, but to follow it up also by saying, and I take full accountability for it. Whether I was drunk or sober, I take full accountability for it, okay? I am not big in my life on people blaming drinking or drugs for their actions. I'm just not, okay? Because if that were the case, there's a lot we could blame this world on, all right? People, well, I'm drunk, so I did this, or I'm drunk. Well, okay, you made the choice to pick up the drink. Nobody forced me ever to drink. Nobody forced me ever to pick up a drug. So whatever came after that was on me. I got to take responsibility for that. You know, I got to take responsibility for making my dad worried at night because he didn't know where I was, right? Like, I can say, well, that's on you because you were worried about me. I'm sorry you felt that way. It wouldn't have happened. You know, it was because I was drunk. Well, all that's true, okay? But my dad wouldn't have felt some kind of way, number one, and my dad wouldn't have been worried about me or feared about me if I hadn't picked up the drink to begin with or drugs. So that was all on me. I need to own all of that, right? And really the amends process, and this is a little secret that most people don't tell you, the amends process is not for the person that you're making amends to. The amends process is really for the person that's making amends, to clean up the wreckage of their past, right? So if you're not doing it appropriately the first time, you're going to have to go back and do it again. You really are. And one of the things that I have been taught that has really, like, I don't know, been like so profound to me the last couple years is that if I find myself, and I'm not going to say that I've never had to make an amends twice, because I have, but not many times. But if I am making an amends more than once, then I need to go back in the steps, right? Like, I need to look at my character defects that are directly related to that amends. Am I not working on that character defect that it continues to, happen again and again, that I need to work specifically on that amends or that character defect? Or do I need to go back to my fourth and fifth step? Have I not removed that resentment? Have I not taken a look at my part? Do I need to go back to steps 2 and 3? Have I not given up my will, you know, to a higher power? Like, I mean, how far back does this go, right? But you have every right to accept or not accept an amends. And you can say to that person why, and say, I feel like you're putting the blame on me. Like, and hey, I'm having a really hard time forgiving you. I have many friends of mine that will make amends to their parents, to their spouses, to whoever, and their spouse or their parent will look at them and say, first of all, the other thing is this, is that one of the things that we don't talk about with amends is that we ask you, how can I repair this? You know, people will say in amends all the time, don't ever drink again, don't ever speak to me that way again, don't ever contact. I had an ex-boyfriend of mine say, don't ever contact me again, I don't ever want to hear from you again. I could do that. That was easy to do, right? Financial amends, having to pay full financial amends to somebody or whatever. So it's not just about forgiving somebody. You get to dictate how that amends process goes, right? I've had a lot of friends of mine that will make amends to somebody, and I have to say, I've generally had pretty easy amends with people. I've had a few difficult ones. But, you know, I've had friends of mine that will say, like, I have one friend I knew that said that, like, he went to his mom, and his mom was like, I'm not ready to accept your amends yet. I had another friend, their spouse, and their spouse was like, I'm not witnessing change yet. I'm not willing to accept this amends yet. I just can't. I can't. And it's not about really forgiveness. It's about accepting that they've changed as a person. I think the other thing is this. I think we're sometimes afraid to do that because if we don't forgive that person or we don't accept their amends, we're worried that they're going to go back out there and they're going to drink or they're going to drug again, right? Or they're going to start using drugs or substances again or drink again. It is really important for me to remember, as a human being, I do not have that kind of power, okay? I don't have the power to make somebody drink, and I don't have the power to get somebody drunk. Just like nobody had the power to get me drunk, and nobody has the power to get me sober. I can only do that work on myself. So whatever you say to that person, whether they decide to pick up or not, that is on them. That is not on you. And if you do not accept their amends, okay, and you're not in a position to forgive them at this point, that's what you need to do for you, okay? What they do with that is about them. If I went to somebody and I made amends and that person looked at me and said, I'm not willing to accept this amends yet, I can tell you the first thing I would do is call up my sponsor and say this person wasn't willing to accept the amends. And my sponsor would say, well, did you ask them why? Did you ask them what work they need to see in the future? And then she'd say, those are the things that we need to work on. Because you have a person in your life telling you that they're not witnessing change, and that's a pretty big deal. Or you have a person that's so resentful that you don't even realize how deeply you affected their life, okay? You have no awareness or acknowledgement of that at all. So we maybe need to work on that a little bit more, you know, on how deeply you really affected these people. Because it's ultimately about you as the alcoholic or the addict. For you out there that's accepting the amends, you know, I don't know. For me, I'm glad in my amends process that I had very authentic conversations with people, that they were really willing to tell me, like, how much I had hurt them, or how bad, you know, I had affected their life, or how worried they were about me, or how much they loved me. They weren't just willing to be like, yeah, it's okay, we're cool, whatever, you know, I forgive you. And some of them I walked away with not feeling great. Most of them I walked away with feeling like, that weight's off my shoulders, right? But some of them I had to take a deeper look at, you know? So it's really all about change. And you have every right to forgive somebody, and not even just in recovery. I think this is an important lesson. You, as human beings out there, have every right to forgive somebody when you're ready to. You know, I sent a video of mine the other day. I think we accept apologies way too quickly in society today. You know, somebody says, I'm sorry, and we go, okay. You know, and then 2 weeks later, they're doing the same thing. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. You know, that's why my dad got tired of hearing that. I want to see change in people today. Change means a lot to me. Walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. And it's important for me to do the same thing as well, you know? It's not just something I expect from other people and don't expect from myself. I think it's a really valid question that you have, and I think it's really important to have this conversation, whether you're on the receiving end of it or you're the person making the amends, you know? I think one of the things that we're really afraid to do is have really honest conversations. So to give just some direct suggestions of how I would want somebody to come to me. If I were in that person's position, I would want the person in my life to come to me and be like, hey, listen, I'm not in a position to forgive you yet. Like, I just feel like the excuses that you're giving me are just putting it off on this, putting it off on that, and I'm not in a position to be able to do that yet. I wish I was. I love you. I just can't, and I don't know what's keeping me from that, and have an honest conversation. I think we're so afraid in this world to just have honest conversations with somebody, you know? Somebody asked me the other day, they said, how do I approach somebody that's in recovery? Like, they said the same question, like, I don't want, you know, to question their sobriety. Just go to them and say, like, I want to be as helpful and supportive as possible. I don't want you to think I'm questioning your sobriety. How can I do that? How can I be the most supportive to you? You know, people ask me all the time, how can I be supportive of my this person or my spouse, my sibling, my friend, or whatever? Ask them. Call them up and be like, hey, listen, I want to be, I don't know that person, you do. Call them up and be like, hey, listen, I want to be really supportive of you. That would mean so much to me if I got a call like that. And I have to be honest with you, in early sobriety, I got very few of those calls. Maybe one from an old friend that said, how can I be the most supportive to you? You know, I got very few calls like that from family or friends, you know. I kind of had to tell them what I needed from them. I didn't get a lot of people because I don't think we have the language for that. We're still afraid to talk about that today, you know? So anyway, that was a great question that you asked. I really appreciate you for asking that. And I'm trying to do more of these responding to comments in the comment section below. So if you have a question for me, please leave it in the comment section below. Know that I'm only answering from my experience, strength, and hope, and my life experience. This is obviously not expert advice on any level, but I just love answering these questions. So let me know what you want to know in the comment section below. I love you guys. Hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.